ourselves. First of all, there's a few things you can do when that voice comes to you and you start criticizing yourself. There's often 3 steps to self-compassion. One of them is acknowledging that voice, being aware of it, and almost standing back from it. And the way to stand back from that negative self-talk is mindfulness or the breath. And we hear all the talks about mindfulness, but you don't have to be a professional meditator to do it. Even if you take a deep breath in a stressful situation, you can already become aware of the self-talk and pause and regroup. Not only that, another step to self-compassion is befriending it. Think of how you talk to a friend that's in trouble or feeling anxious or worried or feeling like a failure. Would you ever say, "Oh, you're a failure. You're terrible. Oh, you look awful"? You would never say that to a friend. So how you talk to yourself, think of how you would talk to a friend. And the more you learn to catch yourself, anything you practice, you become, the less you will do negative self-talk without catching yourself in it. I had a certain situation recently where I was really sharp with my daughter. I was cooking dinner and I'd asked for help. My husband's sick, and I got really sharp with her. And I apologized, and the old me would have done the shame spiral of how could I have said something to her? She's going through a hard time. Right away, I apologized, and to myself, I said, "You're a little tired. You need to be kind to yourself." So what can you do the rest of your night to be kind to yourself? Whether that's a self-massage, whether that's reading a book, whether it's asking your family or people around you for time alone. So 3 tips: be aware of your talk, mindfulness, even a deep breath, and talk to yourself as you would talk to a good friend.
Thank you.
You're
Steffi,
welcome.
I am going to put up very quickly, if people can take a
Mhm.
look,
Mhm.
because while I share this, I'm going to pass on a question that someone has of you.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I'll share this wonderful document of tips and tricks for being kinder to oneself that you've shared with us and that we will be sending off to the audience as well. So as I share this,
Mhm.
I will now, can you guys see it? Hold
I think
on.
you just have to move it down. It's just got the title.
Oh,
I can
bear
try.
with me. Yeah,
You
what if you
want
would
me to
please?
try?
Yes,
Let me try.
absolutely. So
I'll
while
go
you're doing
there.
that,
Yep.
I'll ask Steffi, this is from an anonymous person out there.
Mhm.
I'm curious to know, let's see here, how you landed on kindness as a core value.
Is she curious how I personally landed on kindness as a core value, or why I think it's a core value?
We could do
Uh,
both, actually. I think those are
Okay.
both good questions.
Okay. Personally, it's a great question. I was born to parents too young to be parents, and I was a neglected child, for lack of a better word, not because of cruelty, because they were too young and didn't choose to be parents. So the kindness of a grandmother in a small town and an aunt helped me feel that I was important and I had something to say. And I was also bullied once in elementary school and never forgot that feeling of isolation.
Mm,
So from that time, I decided that I didn't want anyone to feel that vulnerable. And in school, in my first job, I was often the one who would stand up for the underdog. And I felt it was really important to treat people with compassion, even if you don't understand them. And when my kids were young, I started asking them to do something kind for someone else on Fridays, because I married a Jewish man and we did Shabbat dinner. And duty didn't mean that much to me. Something that had meaning did. And by asking my kids, I moved into being asked by a teacher to teach it and working with teachers and the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation to build a curriculum. And now I take it to corporations. So I hope that
beautiful.
answers your question.
Beautiful. And thank you for that great question. And if you have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. Keep those coming. Now, if you're answering the poll questions, thank you so much. I see activity in there. If you see that there's something not covered in the poll questions, or perhaps that you actually want to see covered tonight or another table talk and another table talk, throw that in the chat. Okay. So thank you again for the feedback that you're giving. And Steffi, thank you so much for the information you provided today.
It's an
It's
honor.
excellent. It's excellent. Being kind to ourselves is the first step. Now, when it comes to being kind to ourselves and taking care of ourselves, there is that aspect of the thoughts and the self-care internally, but then externally, what do we do? How can we can't go over to get the massage anymore. We can't necessarily go see the therapist that we've gone to in past, but there's a lot that we can do physically for ourselves. And Elise Marie, I'd love for you to touch on that a bit. Little
Yeah.
tips and tricks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sort of like everybody, your massage therapist is sitting at home. We're we're involved. We're stuck here too. So more than happy to hear from clients when they reach out and say, this issue that we've had before that we've been working on, how can I help? If you are having an issue that is ongoing and that you're not quite sure, a stretch or a technique to get into those areas that you were working with your therapist on, feel free to reach out to them. We're all more than happy. We're sitting at home too. So we're happy to reach out and help you and continue that care that we established when you decided to step into our clinic room. We're happy to continue that. We will still be there for you. One of the things that I wanted to do tonight, because I didn't get the chance to do so in our other table talks, and one of the things that Steffi specifically also requested was some self-massage and some awareness things. And I love the theme tonight of resiliency, because how resilient are our bodies and our minds in order to keep going through whatever you have experienced, trauma, not trauma, a rough day, a sport, sitting at a desk, sitting on the couch, some sort of event. Your body has gotten you through all of these things. And so let's take a minute to thank your body and say thanks for showing up and actually being able to stand up today. But let's also give it a little bit of TLC, because little things dive deep into our muscle tissue and our connective tissue, and they sit there until we acknowledge them and work on them. So one of the areas that I want us to think about today is the neck and the jaw. So if everybody can participate, this would be great.
Let's do this.
For sure.
Get nice and comfortable, nice and loose. I don't care if you're sitting up straight or not. I won't judge your posture, because mine's terrible too. Everyone's going to take a deep breath in and a big exhale, nice and settled. And I want you just to pay attention to where you're feeling tension now. Everyone is different. Everybody feels things differently and in different places. So just take a little scan of your body. Where is the tension sitting for you right now? Are you in a comfortable position? Are you shifting a lot? Are your hips or low back sore? Is your abdomen compressed? Are you able to breathe fully? Are you holding your neck up to your ears? Are you clenching your jaw? So pay attention to those little things. And I want you to just put your hands on the side of your head like you have a splitting headache. And then I want you to clench your teeth, just gently. And you should feel these muscles pop into your hands on the sides of your head. Once you've found the full size of those muscles, because they're quite big, congratulations, you just found your temporalis. These are muscles involved in chewing. So I want you to take the pads of your fingers just on the sides of your temple and really gently go into little circles all around that muscle. And if you find you've lost your way in terms of the musculature, clench your teeth again, and it'll pop into your fingers and it'll tell you you're in the right space. You don't need a lot of pressure here. This doesn't need to be beaten out. We need to be gentle with ourselves as much as we can. And then I want you to drop below your cheekbone. Find your cheekbones there and come below your cheekbone. And I want you to do the same thing all the way down your jaw, all the way down underneath and back up towards your ear.
That feels wonderful. I gotta
Feels
say.
good, hey?
Yeah.
So good.
I'm enjoying it.
Now, I want you to pay attention to the inside of your mouth. And this is a very weird place to pay attention to, and a lot of people don't pay attention to it. So if you're comfortable, close your eyes. Imagine that there's just a micromillimeter of space between your teeth. Try not to have your teeth touching. If it helps you to put your hands on your face, great. But imagine that there's a little bit of space between your teeth. Now drop your tongue away from the roof of your mouth. And hands up if you didn't realize your tongue was on the roof of your mouth, because a lot of the times we don't actually realize it. Let your tongue drop away from the roof of your mouth and let your jaw hang just a little bit. Taking a deep breath in and let that heaviness into the bottom of your jaw really settle in, and feel how the rest of your head can feel lighter when you're not compressing and contracting those muscles. You do in your day. Separate your teeth, drop your tongue off the roof of your mouth, and then we have a couple of seconds of relief there.
I am so glad you got all that in. It bugged out a little bit at the end there, but I think we got the good, we got most of the meat.
Okay,
We got
good.
most of the meat. Yeah, that was fantastic.
I tried to go a little quickly, but we're laughing at the same time.
No, that was great. And you know what? I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for those tips, because like I mentioned in past table talks, we don't even know, especially when it comes to post-trauma
Yeah.
and stress, how much of it is sitting in our bodies and in our jaws, and the clenching and the grinding. And like I've said before, I'm not a grinder, but I am a clencher. And, you know, secrets is part of that whole phenomenon, which shows up in our body with a lot of tension here. You know, looking at headaches and all of that, if you look at the source, we're more able to deal with chronic situations than we are if we're just ignoring the core issue behind some of our physical ailments. So thank you so much. Thank you, Elise Marie. And we're going to move on to talking about just the fact that all of this in our body, we're holding it, we've got these mechanisms for dealing with it, with addressing it. But I really want to deal with the actual mechanisms of processing what we go through life. You know, there's negative and there's positive. And we tend to avoid the pain and run towards the joy all the time. But what do we do when we are confronted with the pain of different things that are happening, the confusion of some of our situations? What are some tools that we can use? And I want to bring this to Essie now, just to talk a bit about, you know, some of the methodologies that got you to where you are, considering what you've shared as your life experience in your past.
Of course. Uh, Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, Elias, thank you. I can go home now because I'm kind of relaxed. That was a great webinar. So, well, you know, this is my belief that I believe in able to grow. We got in my case, you know, like challenges and pain is not a bad thing. And I had to subconsciously learn that through my experience that, you know, I don't have to be happy and good. And, you know, if I've been lying down in a couch and nothing, I would do nothing. So through challenges that makes me feel uncomfortable, to the point that in my case, it's a little extreme. You know, as a child, you know, I was born into the mother of not even 12 years old. And, you know, been in so many challenges that I had to overcome, you know, before age of 10, and been in a war when I was a child soldier of 13, refugee camp, and a lot of resentment against everybody. So I went through a process, and I believe if you're going through challenges and difficulties, my experience, welcome it, like with your heart, because I am pretty sure even right now the challenges that we go through this epidemic is like, so what? Like, what am I grateful today? Because if either I'm living in a gratitude or I'm living in a fear. I can't live in a fear and gratitude at the same time. For the simplest things, you know, it's like you're having kids in your house, healthy, and sometimes comparing to other places like, you know, that are less unfortunate, and able to level ourselves out. And that's the way, and being kind, as you were saying, being kind and loving to other people, and that helps me to overcome some obstacle.
So what I hear from you, definitely the gratitude spoke so loudly to me, you know, the ability to pay attention to what is there that I am deeply grateful for, really adds context when I start spinning on, oh, my husband didn't put out the garbage, or whatever. I just pulled that out of the air. But
poor Miss Saba.
Yeah.
I take out the garbage.
For those listening, the IT technician and director is also my husband. So when it comes to the gratitude piece, I hear that loud and clear. The thing about that, the power of it is absolutely mind-boggling. And what I want to do is actually go to Mark and come back to you as well, toggle between you two for a minute, because there are moments when it's challenging to find that, those moments when it cannot be found. What are mechanisms that are useful to find that gratitude, find that light, find a tool to help pull out, Mark, did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, so I think I'll try to condense this a little bit, but in 2012, I got diagnosed with depression while I was in policing. And so I wasn't in a place to accept or receive gratitude. And things got progressively worse. So between 2012 and 2016, I had two of my closest friends die by suicide. My mom was sort of given her a week to live. A whole bunch of things condensed, really traumatic events. And what I ended up doing that sort of got me through everything was, rather than looking at all the traumas as just traumas, I actually turned them into a message. So I started to kind of look at it in a bigger picture, cosmically, saying, okay, is the universe trying to speak to me through these traumas? And so I started connecting the traumas as to how they relate to my life, symbolically. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up sort of putting the traumas together and saying, okay, the first trauma happened and it represented my childhood, sport, and then the second one was university and my career, and then the most recent one was my family. It was my mother. And I thought to myself, okay, if I connect all of these, the universe is telling me that I'm missing something. And what I came to was I started to realize that I had lost my way in how I took it all together. I lost my way and I had to find my way back. And one of the things I had to do was release myself from an identity that wasn't whole, right? So I wasn't looking at myself holistically. So I allowed the police identity to be the sole identifier of who I am as a person, right? And in doing that, I decided, okay, let me take away this singular identity of self. Let me kill him off and see what is left, right? And when I did it, instantaneously, I could feel all the trauma, all the hurt, all the pain instantly was gone. And I went back to my mom's bedside and I told her, I said, hey, I'm leaving policing. And she was too weak to even put up the, what are you, crazy? Don't do that. She just went, okay. And they ended up finding a tumor. She ended up not dying. She lived, she's still alive, but she lived for a year with this tumor on chemo until they were able to do surgery. And I took as the universe giving me a year to figure out, how do I rebuild myself holistically, right? And as soon as she had the surgery, I then said, okay, again, coming back to the passions, what am I passionate about? And then I started to build my life through that lens of, I will only do things that fill that cup of passion, that don't empty it, that don't exhaust it. And so the interesting thing is my two passions, speaking about mental health and working with young people and educating on policing, I now get to do both. And the mental health part, I actually talked to police officers about being an officer and coming forward and saying to your service, I have depression. And I'm happy to say in the past 3 years, we've had police officers that have come forward and actually gone and sought treatment, which is amazing because now we're actually helping heal a profession that has so much authority and pain. And then they exact that pain out on the public. And we don't realize that, in fact, they need help in order to be better to serve us. So it's been such an incredible thing because all these traumas actually allowed me to help others. And if I didn't have the traumas, I wouldn't have been able to do it, right? I wouldn't be able to do what it is I'm doing now without the trauma.
Wow. Wow, Mark. Essie and Mark together, you blow my mind. You all blow my mind. Thank you so much for that. The last piece that you talked about, having not experienced what we experience, we would not be the person that we are in the moment. And I've always said that. In fact, what I used to say, everything happens for a reason. And then a very good person, a very good spirit that I've been blessed to interact with, taught me this term called fatalistic determinism. Now, how many here even know what that means? Because I didn't know what that meant until I heard it and then I looked it up. And I realized that by saying that everything happens as it should for a reason, when we're talking about trauma, could land in a very weird place. And what you're talking about reminds me of that same intention that I have behind the words of everything happens as it should. It's not that I would repeat anything that has happened that has broken my heart or violated my body or attacked my mind, but I would not change any moment previous to this moment because I had to work hard to love myself the way I am today. And that's the way I hear you, Mark, is that you made some serious sacrifices in order to be able to find yourself again. Because I don't know about y'all out there, but as a police officer myself, former police officer myself, it's a big deal to just up and leave policing. It's a big deal for many, many, many reasons. And so it was no small decision. So from a former police officer to another former police officer, I want to say thank you for the work you're doing, because not many police officers deal with this because the stigma is just so huge. The burden is heavy. We sign on to deal with stuff that nobody else in society wants to deal with. And we bring a lot of baggage with us before we even walk through the door. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that method of finding your passion in order to deal with the challenges. Thank you so much. And Essie, I want to come back to you very quickly, because what I suspect what Mark is talking, not I suspect, I know because of my looking into what you do and how you do it. Some of what Mark has spoken about is true. It's not attached to the policing industry at all. Just the thought of finding purpose, because we've talked about that, finding purpose to balance out from the darkness that can be, that can follow trauma. So what I want to ask you is, how did you find that passion to spread your word and story and message after that life? If you could explain in a few minutes how you found it. Mark told us his catalyst. What was yours?
Sure. Yeah, that's see, I was living in a refugee camp. I escaped from Iran when I was like very young, and I shot myself in the war and able to escape and the trauma. But what I did after years of, I've been to 17 treatment centers, 29 detox, like psych ward, and until almost 6 years ago, I overcome a lot of obstacles and I got healthy, and I speak in the places and people would come to me and say, wow, I can relate to that. And it gave me some, and when I find the solution, that people would come to me and they say, wow, you helped me because of this and of that. And then I've been, since then, my mission, like I can't describe it, the feeling that you get when you impact someone else and you see them desperate, you come like, you know, very desperate and lost, and you help them, and I talk to them and share my experience, and then see them, they grow, and they with their families, and they say, and you have part of that, because lack of self-esteem or not really feeling that I could be have any purpose in life, to the point that I've been to, you know, speaking all over the place. I just did a Zoom like with 900 people. That's my third Zoom a day. So when I have that, doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank, doesn't matter family, if you're not happy and you don't have purpose, which I find, and as you can tell from my voice and my action, that it's like I'm like pumped up, I'm lit, as someone of my friends says, that how can I be in service? Because I get energized when I can see I can touch someone's heart, and for that I'm truly blessed and grateful.
Thank you so much. So purpose is a commonality.
Yeah.
Finding that purpose again, that passion to come out sometimes when you feel like you can't get out of bed. Like, what are you going to do? What's your value? What's your worth? I love the passion with which you speak. And it's funny, I never would have thought that passion can align with money. Well, no, that's not true. I've seen people very passionate about money, in fact. But in the way that you speak about it, Asil, I've never actually watched someone's eyes light up at the thought of bringing holism or holistic approach to money, to finances. But you did. You light up when you talk about therapy with regards to money, changing the way we perceive money. Thank you again for coming. If you could give us a little bit of that, give us some insight.
It's interesting you say that, because when I worked in the corporate world as a financial planner in the bank, my eyes won't light up when I speak about money from a numbers perspective. But when I talk about it from a concept of energy and flow and the different layers of it, that's when my excitement and my fulfillment started to, it was born in these moments. That's why I left the corporate world to pursue my passion. And I actually did prepare a presentation that I can take you through, just to give you some food for thought and things you can start thinking about, because I think this opportunity that we're experiencing today with COVID-19 is truly an opportunity for us to ask really great questions. And I'm just taking everything in from everybody that shared so far, and I'm so grateful for that. Like, I couldn't stop smiling because all of you were emphasizing the points of serving others and sharing our talents with the world. And I truly believe that's like the nucleus of true wealth. But let me share my screen here, because I prepared something to share with you. So while there's different roadmaps to wealth, there's no one way. There's a framework in how the word is written, I think, that really offers perspective. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. So whenever I speak to clients about wealth, we're humans are really programmed to start thinking about actions. Everybody calls me and they're like, tell me what to do. And I always emphasize that action is not the place you start from. You start from aligning yourself with your values and really getting in touch with your truth. That's really where the conversation should start. So even through the framework of the word wealth itself, we start by writing down our goals. And there's a reason for that, because from my experience, there's two things people struggle with when it comes to wealth and the concept of it. It's either their worthiness of it or their capability of it. And these two are often interchangeably challenging to people at different levels. But writing down your goals is one way to start introducing the empowering belief system that that wealth is something that you're capable of. And that is different for whatever it means to you. I never refer to wealth as a numerical value. It's an experience. And I always tell my clients, what can you do today to start living rich? How can you live rich with or without money? Because it's truly a holistic concept that I refer to when I say that word. And money is part of that cycle, but it's not the full cycle. And then you visualize that future. After you write your goals, you start visualizing what it's like to actually achieve these things. And then you affirm them, because these belief systems are often, we all talked about the inner voice. We need to continuously grow these beliefs that we actually start believing them and creating tangibility around them. Listening to your intuition is not just one of those things that you dismiss. I can't tell you enough how our bodies are our compass. We have a built-in GPS system by just listening to our emotions and to our bodies. So that is part, that is part of that process. And after you've done all that foundational work, then comes action. That's when you start the opportunities. That's when you do with different things. And the last part is really key, because anybody can give money. It's the challenge is in receiving opportunities. And the same thing, it's funny because my therapist trainer told me anybody can give love, but the challenge is learning how to receive it. And I think that's the same when it comes to opportunities and to wealth and to money. We can go and give money to a charity, but to open ourselves to the possibilities, that to let the flow of money into our life, that's really where people have a challenge. And this is where I'm passionate to help them uncover and build for themselves. So I feel this is actually, when I was thinking about my logo, this is my logo. I thought in the middle, okay, let me represent abundance with this big circle in the middle. And then the leaves around it, each represent one area of how the flow of money works in our lives. And I thought, we need to make sure that each and every single area of that, it represents our values. And there's a lot of other great speakers today that spoke about that, to live a life of alignment, to be aware of your values. If you really dislike your job, then you're disliking the way your money is coming into your life. So you have no respect to that money originally because of the source it's coming from. If somebody is miserable in their jobs, naturally they're gonna not spend it wisely. They're not gonna spend it to things they care about. And I tell my clients, show me your expense sheet and I'll tell you who you are. And if your expense sheet doesn't tell me who you are, then something is wrong with how you've been spending. And I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with clients who are clueless about how much they make and how much they spend. And for me, it's always been very challenging to wrap my head around how can such a big area in our life be so ambiguous. And the reason is because it's an emotional piece. So basically, I just wanted people. So the last thing I want to leave people with is this piece, which was really, really interesting. Trauma usually gets people to either hoard or spend. You either live as if you're fearful of spending money, or you spend it in a way where there's no tomorrow. And that's very common. So I want people in this time of the COVID to reflect on how they're actually feeling and try to bring mindfulness and balance to this area in their lives, because it's if there's ever been a time in history where we need to do that, it's the time now.
Oh man, thank you so much. That's a lot, man. Okay, I hope you come back, to be honest, because there's a lot of information that we need to get about money and energy, and just that, even this hoarding and spending. Most times people who are talking about the financials, they're talking about the numbers. Do this, A plus B equals C. It's like dieting, which I'm not all for. If you put this much in and you do this much, to get rid of your weight. It's not as simple as that. That weight acquisition, the spending, the hoarding is based on something that can be quite emotional, and there's a core issue. Same thing as everything else, there's a core issue. So I love the fact, Asil, that you are actually addressing some of those issues in the financial advising. And for those out there, you're seeing a lot of information here, and you'll continue to see it as we go through our next few panelists. We will be actually sharing that with you through whatever means that you've made available for us to contact you again. We also will be putting up the recording on our YouTube channel, so please subscribe and you'll have access to that to see all of this again, especially those shares that you gave us, Cecile. Thank you so much. Now, thank you. When it comes to the whole structure and recognizing the core issues, that makes me think about, some of those arguments sometimes that we have that we think it's about the garbage when it really is about something that was done before. And I'm just using the garbage as a reason to be angry at my husband. So we're going to talk about stress management and conflict resolution with Helen. So what would you suggest when it comes to getting shut in? And, whether it's with our children, because we have many relationships, relationship with ourselves, relationship with our children, relationship with our partner, relationship even with our pet companion. I mean, there's a lot going on. So what would you suggest in these times for people?
Well, can I share my screen?
Absolutely, please do.
Let's see what happens.
Remember to keep polling, everyone, and ask questions.
Okay, so we're going to talk about coping and managing stress. Are we good?
Let's see. No.
Maybe I didn't share. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, no problem. And so while you're doing that, what I'll encourage is if you do see in the polling, which is actually going well, thank you for all the feedback. It's going to help us in future. If you see that there's something that's not included in the polling questions, throw it in the chat. Keep throwing your stuff in the chat. I'll get to it.
I wanted to, before I kind of got into the crux of what I wanted to talk about, I just wanted to mention the whole issue of what stress does. And I mean, we're talking about resiliency, and a lot of people are feeling super stressed with COVID-19, especially as we hear the statistics mounting and so on and so forth. So if we're aware of the fact that when we are stressed, it actually compromises our immune system, and that's not what we want. We want our immune system to be functioning at its optimal. And I particularly like this cartoon because I think it really speaks to the issue of what happens when your body is not stressed. You have this kind of wall built up that prevents various ailments and diseases from affecting us. And when we are stressed, then we have the opposite, where the various diseases, the ailments and so forth can break through the barrier, break through whatever it is that we have set up and cause us to succumb to illnesses. So I'd like to start with that. Then the next thing I want to talk about is what I call 4 A's of coping. So one thing that we can do with coping with COVID-19 is to take control of our environment, to think about not avoiding the stress like it doesn't exist, but how can we manage it? And one way to do that is to try to prioritize things, to look at the stresses that we have in our environment and think of things in terms of A, B, C. What is it that I must do today? What is it that I should do today? And what is it that would be nice to do? And if we can manage that, that may help us to kind of cope so we don't feel as though we're overwhelmed. There are people who can kind of work with us around some of these tasks that we set up to do. Another one is altering. So when we look at our dealing with our stressors and dealing with COVID-19, instead of using that very sort of judgmental tone when we're speaking with those around us, if we can communicate using I feel frustrated by this sheltering in place. I feel frustrated because I can't go out as much as I'd like to. I feel frustrated because I want to go to the restaurant and I can't. I feel frustrated because I want to go to the movies and I can't. I want to go and see a Raptors game and I can't. So we're sort of acknowledging what it is that's frustrating us instead of looking at the individuals around us and saying, you make me so frustrated, you make me so angry, blah, blah, blah. That really doesn't help matters much. And then just kind of accepting the situation. So this is another, what I call another A of coping. And this is just looking at our ability to accept things as they are and to talk about what's stressing us with people around us, who we trust, people who we feel that we can share our feelings with. And that if we are feeling anger, feel free to express yourself. And we heard about this a little earlier from some of our other panelists. How can we express ourselves? How can we forgive ourselves? Can we move on? And knowing that when we are angry and when we hold on to that, as I showed from the very first screen, that leads to dis-ease. And that's how I would define any kind of ailment that we have that's wrong with our body that makes us sick. It is a dis-ease. It's when our body's not in homeostasis, when we're kind of off kilter. So if we can learn from things that have happened in our past and try to accept the situation that we're currently living in and live in the moment and figure out what is it that I can do to accept this new, I won't call it new normal, but this new environment that we find ourselves in. And then how do we adapt? How do we redefine our need for perfectionism? Everything's not going to be perfect. We are going to make some glitches.
Oh my goodness, it glitched when she said glitches.
And then stopping all of the gloomy thoughts. One of the things that I like to do, and I heard, and I lost my train of thought. Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
you are.
Great. Sorry about that.
No worries at all.
Okay, so I don't know where I was, but anyway, if we can try to reframe what it is that we're saying and thinking gratefully. And one of the tools that I found recently that I use every morning is something called Good Days Start with Gratitude Journal. And every morning without fail, I get up and I write down the 3 things that I'm grateful for. And that might be just being able to get out of bed. It might mean having some friends around. It might mean being able to reach out to somebody. What am I grateful for? And I like to start my day with that so that I'm kind of canceling out some of the negative thoughts that I might have. That enables me to look at how can I handle my life? How can I handle this situation? And what is my reality going to look like a year from now, a month from now? And knowing that this issue isn't going to disappear, but how can I manage it? How can I look at it more positively? And how can I turn it around? I heard Essie talk about, taking some of our frustrations and some of our challenges and seeing it as positive realities. I think I also heard you say something like that as well, Mark. So how do we do that? How do we make that shift? I think that's really important. And I'd like to kind of end by talking about these 5 animals in terms of how we try to manage our conflict with those around us. See, on the relationship side, it's how do we feel about the people around us and how important is that relationship? And on the bottom, we see goals. So we see, for example, like the turtle is the one who is sort of saying, well, the relationship isn't important, so I don't really care about go in my shell and forget to exist. The teddy bear, on the other hand, is concerned about the relationship and says, I just love you and I just really don't care about you. So if I take a bite out of you and I kill you, that's all fine. And the fox is kind of saying, well, okay, maybe today we'll work on it. We'll do it my way. Tomorrow we'll do it your way. And of course, the owl is the one who's saying, let's sit and see how we can negotiate and work on something together that looks like a combined solution. And I hope.
Excellent. Wow. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of the visuals as well, because I tend to be a visual learner myself. So I appreciate all the support that you all brought visually to support what it is that you're speaking about. And what I'd love now to talk about, since you spoke about, resolution and understanding what emotions that we're having and attributing it to what's happening inside of us, as opposed to the people out there, I'd love to come now to Day, right? I joke about husband and garbage and all of that, but I really am joking because the husband's awesome. But anyway, I just want to bring it over to Day to talk about those conflicting situations where you may be tired or you're going to be stretched, because that's what kids do. They do stretch us, and they're developing and all of that. What are a few key tips and tricks that you would offer to the audience out there who are listening? And by the way, you guys, we will be a little over 8:30, so feel free to, if you need to go, you can go, but we will be wrapping up with Masaba talking about IT care after Day. So Day, what do you do with the kids when things are tough?
Well, first, I'm just so grateful for the panelists that are here. I wish that I could have you guys with me as I walk around throughout my day, advising me on what to do next as things get shot my way. But I mean, as parents, we're dealing with a lot of stress, anxiety. It's very real. There's a lack of our educational structure that we were used to, the information from media, friends. There's a lot coming at us at one time. And one thing that we also have to keep in mind is, as parents or family members who are leading our family, it's the same situation with doctors or nurses, a lot of the families here. We have so much going on in our one life that we're almost torn to pieces. I was so glad to hear what's been said by the panelists so far, Helen, about the on how to deal with this stress and anxiety. And I think it was Margaret Essie who I heard was saying about welcome what's going on, welcome challenges. I think it was Essie. And
may I interrupt just for a moment? I don't know if it was buggy across the board, but I feel like what you just said was very important, and I'd love for you to repeat it because it just went kind of robot-like.
Well, I think it was Essie who had mentioned something about welcoming the challenge and having gratitude for it. And I think I think what I want to say, because it's totally changed what I was going to say, have been thrown up in the air. The way we were behaving in week 1 from a March break to now is completely different. Now we're dealing as parents or as guardians, dealing with a lot more stress because with the educational of our kids and trying to keep up. I'm hearing a lot of parents who are not even bothering. I mean, they have their jobs to do, and they're just saying, you know what, we're going to leave that aside. There should be no guilt there. I mean, there's so much going on. We're hearing, we're being scared by the media. You're going out and seeing all these screens up in front of the grocery stores. Our anxiety is getting worse, and we're kind of neglecting ourselves. At least I can speak for myself and the parents that I've spoken to. It's starting to get to a point where resiliency is so important. One thing that I personally have done just to try to sort through what's going on, because before I was like, manage your life and time slots for everything. Realistically, not every day is going to look the same. It was a bad day yesterday for my child, practically almost had me crying, and that's just 1 out of 6 of the children. I go walking in the very early of the morning. That's my hum time. I look at the trees, listen to the birds. It's almost like that's the only time I can really hear any voice in my head. And at that point, I welcome it because it's the only time I can hear it. So, I mean, the suggestions that all the panelists have given is what I would suggest is seek your resources, listen to what people are having to say on how to cope. The same thing won't work for everyone, but we have so many resources out there that you have to seek what will work for yourself, and make sure you take the time to do that, because as parents, as people who have to work at home, I mean, you have to try to force that period of time where you can take time for yourself. And for some of us, that might look like only once in the whole entire week, one day in the whole entire week. Grab that one time, and don't hold on to the guilt if your day is not going perfectly, the kids are not getting the education that they have to get for that day. Everything might fall apart in one day. Just stay up, or keep your head above water. And when you feel like you're sinking, be fine with letting everything go and seeking the help that you need, because the most important part of that ship, if you're the captain, is you. And sometimes you have to allow the sailors to frolic while you try to figure your way out. So for me, that's my message for today is sometimes the house may be in disarray, may be crazy, and that's what you need in order to collect yourself. Just do it. Because in the end, if everything just falls apart and you fall apart, then literally your ship is sinking. So that's the advice I give. I mean, waking up every morning, grateful to wake up, but sometimes I don't want to. You just want to stay asleep. But if a 2-year-old doesn't recognize that you're even in the bed and they're crawling on your face, you gotta get up. You don't have that option. Some of us, we don't get to sink into what we would like to sink into because we have to look after others. So keep afloat, be resilient, and watch after yourselves, parents. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I was very moved by the panelists and everything I'm hearing because I'm trying to keep all the chunks of what everyone's saying. And then I remember we have a webinar like this. I don't have to try to grab the chunks. I can go back and read. I can look it up online. You know what I mean? So those are my words.
Thank you so much, Day. Thank you so much. Those words resonate, I'm sure, for a lot of people. I saw a lot of nods, and you know, I'm seeing good response. It's real. It's real stuff. We all could use it. Yeah, take care of yourself. Self-care.
Mm-hmm.
That rang loud and clear. Thank you so much. And you know that you talked about staying connected, and right now, as we socially distance ourselves from each other to stay safe, that means our connection is through our devices. And that's the reason why Masaba is here, because, you know, needing to know how to treat our devices and keeping them healthy is really key, because if the devices go, then how are we connecting? So what do you got for us today, Masaba? Just tips.
Well, I will say, to start off, don't allow your devices to be a source of your frustration. A lot of times we do that. Oh, this is not working and that is not working, and we get overly frustrated. I want to do that. Stop for a second.
Mm-hmm.
It's not controlling you. You're allowing it to control. You know, they can be very addictive. So just keep that in mind and be in control of it. Don't allow it to control you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Take a minute. If something is not working, stop for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And keep it simple. Don't get frustrated. Start off with the small things. Start with the easiest thing first. Repeat the process. Try and keep in control. Turn it off. Turn it back on. It doesn't matter what the problem is. You're going to start a webinar. Make sure your signal strength is good. If you can plug it into your router, there's a whole plethora of different things that one can do. There's so much advice out there and things that one can do to make sure that you're properly connected. But always question, like just before this panel started, Helen had a good question about how from a security standpoint and what one needs to do. So always question. There's a lot of good websites out there. There's a lot of good things that you can check as to whether you're doing the right thing, and keep things up to date, and above all, question. Don't rely on one source. Look at all different sources, but don't get overly frustrated.
Actually, you mentioned something about plugging things in. There are a couple of questions. One of them is it possible to shut off the internet at night without unplugging it? Trying to deal with gaming addiction with a teenager here. Gaming until morning.
Yes, there are ways, and it all depends upon what type of router you have. But I will admit, in the past, what I've done, I have I've put my own software over top of the router that allows me more granular control, and so I have gotten to I had it to a point where you can turn off a specific device for a specific length of time. So if someone hasn't done their homework, you can go in and at this particular time, it will shut off and you'll not get internet access at all. So yes, it is very, very possible.
And you know what we'll do is just make a note of that. That person who asked the question, thank you for that question. If you wouldn't mind making a note either in chat or maybe in the Q&A pertaining to how to do that. I'm sure people would be interested in that for future table talks. I have a second question that I'm going to put out to the floor, and whomever it is that feels you'd like to answer the question, you can feel free to put up your hand in the webinar or simply start speaking. The question is, can you teach an autistic child to meditate and be calm?
Can if someone else wants to take it?
Absolutely.
Sure. There's autism in my family. Apparently there has been, and Helen may know about this too, there has been research that you can do meditation with a child. They've come up with a recent study on a recent exercise called Soles of the Feet procedure, where autistic kids can look at their soles for a break from overstimulation. So there are, and I have an article I can put in the chat window or email to you or the person who asked, and they can do some more research on mindfulness and autism. Even if it's teaching an autistic child to take a deeper breath, that's a form of mindfulness, but I'm happy to share that resource.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steffi, and we will facilitate that for you. Thank you for the question. It has been fabulous tonight, everyone. I'm so grateful. We have one more question that I will floor because we have a few more minutes. I always cover way more than the hour because we get such juicy stuff. So this question is for Essie. Oh, Asil, please. Do wealth and abundance have to come through struggle, as a lot of people believe? Thank you for these questions. They're great questions.
Oh, this one is a very common one. Well, I certainly grew up in a family and in a culture that believed that as well. There's a lot of limiting beliefs to what wealth and abundance is all about. And so the interesting thing is we need to uncover where did this come from. And the reality is when somebody is experiencing a lot of struggle in their life, it's because that's the reflection of their internal belief system. And if that's what you believe, then that's really what your reality would be about. And because it's such a collective reality, then a lot of people take it to be a fact. When there's other realities that we can start exploring where money can flow easily into someone's life. And when we start opening ourselves to these type of experiences and then strengthen the belief system for us that we can also be privy of such experiences, then we can start cultivating abundance with more ease into our life. So it doesn't have to be coming from struggle, even though that's a very collective experience for many. But it's a limiting belief that just doesn't take us anywhere, and bringing awareness to it is a first start to that conversation.
Thank you for that information. And I want to just draw people's attention to the chat because the link that Steffi promised to share is in there. And I also pass it on to the person from whom the question came. So thank you for that. I want to end things off with this question that I have to Mark. How was the reaction from fellow officers about you leaving the force and coming forward with your depression, suggestion to deal with negative feedback?
Fantastic question.
Yes.
And the truth is, initially, I don't really recall because I was under so much stress. But the other thing is that I think is sort of higher level of that is I also didn't care, right? So the two friends that I had who died by suicide, one of them was a police officer in London, England. And both of them were married. Both of them had kids. And the common theme for both of them was that the only people that knew that they were dealing with depression were their wives. Nobody else in their family knew. None of their friends knew, absolutely no one. So for me, what happened was I just made a very quick decision when I was diagnosed to just assess my first friend and say, okay, he's dead because of the silence, the path of silence that he took. And so I just sort of looked at both of us, and we had a lot of similarities between us. And I said, okay, if I do the same thing as him, I'm going to get the same outcome. And so immediately I decided, okay, I'm going to tell the world, anybody that's in my life, you're going to hear about this, because at the very moment I tell you, I will get feedback from you as to whether or not you'll be an ally or you are going to be somebody I can't count on. So I can quickly call everybody in my life and go, okay, whoever's left, these are the ones that are going to keep me on the path to succeed. So the interesting thing was, when I went to policing about it, the first thing that I anticipated was they were going to take my gun. And Kata will know this is part of your police identity, right? It'd be like asking a chef to get rid of their knives because they're dealing with depression, but don't worry, you can still work with spoons in the kitchen. Everything's okay. You can't do that. But again, I immediately went to, okay, if taking the gun is your limited solution, I will have to accept that because my goal is to live, right? And so I always kept that front and center, that whatever price I was going to have to pay, no matter what the price was, it was worth living for. So that price was acceptable. So the interesting thing is, when I started to tell officers, a lot of the officers couldn't believe it. They couldn't process it because they're like, no, you're always optimistic and you're fun and you always, you like to work with everybody. And that's what actually helped me understand this even more, because I was like, you're missing the point, right? Is that depression is the word that is given to the chemical process going on in the brain. We could have called it something else, but we didn't. And so because that word is now linked to the chemical process in the brain, people have a hard time disassociating that word from, well, sad, or, so for me, it was really interesting because it gave me the opportunity to educate, because the other piece for this was every officer that I could talk to and say, hey, you need to understand this a little bit better. This is what it looks like. It then allows those officers to go out and deal with the public who is dealing with this, that they can see past the illness and say, maybe these people that I'm meeting for the first time have some similarities to my colleague. Maybe they, in their moment of crisis, when they're not in crisis, maybe they're funny, maybe they're fun, maybe they're optimistic. All the labels that they had for me previously.
Mark, I'm not sure.
Label, which was depression.
Okay, so you're actually glitching right now, and I'm actually going to have to interject. I want to hear the rest of this, but I'm hoping you will come back and do a part to what you're saying, because we have to close up. We are now fully almost 15 minutes beyond the time. I'm so grateful to all of you. I'm so grateful to the participants. This has been amazing. It touches my heart, what has been shared today and what will continue to be shared on BeWISE. So remember to be well, be informed, safe, and empowered in life. We can do this, people. We just need to connect, whether it's here or any other space where you feel safe. Okay, so have a fantastic night. See you next time. Be wise.
Masaba, don't forget to take out the garbage.
Oh, I will.
That's right. That's right.
I got your back. I got your